Have you ever wondered why the more awakened you become, the more exhausted you feel, why the deeper your clarity, the heavier your silence becomes? It's a strange contradiction, isn't it? You didn't ask for enlightenment just to end up more alone. You didn't peel back the illusions of the world just to stare into the void they were hiding. And yet, here you are not lost, but unmoored, not broken, just unbearably awake. You used to care too much. Now, it's not that you don't care, it's that you can't fake it anymore. Small talk feels like static, old dreams feel foreign, and the people who once fit into your life now echo like ghosts in a house you've outgrown. You thought awakening would bring joy. Instead, it stripped you bare. But here's the truth. No one told you. This discomfort is sacred. This numbness, this silence, this stillness, it isn't failure. It's a threshold. And this video, it isn't for those chasing bliss. It's for those brave enough to sit in the fire of what awakening really demands. Are you ready to hear what comes next when the light fades and the real work begins? We've been sold a beautiful lie. That success equals happiness. That clarity leads to motivation. That once you awaken, life gets easier. You get a vision board, a yoga mat, a tidy little morning routine, and suddenly everything clicks. But real awakening doesn't fit into an Instagram post. It doesn't give you a morning high. It gives you a funeral for your old self. Society teaches us to build a life worth envying, but never a life worth living. We're told to chase goals, climb ladders, collect affirmations as if external order could quiet internal chaos. And when it doesn't, we think something's wrong with us. But maybe what's wrong is the map we were given. Carl Jung once said, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. And that includes chasing enlightenment just to avoid feeling. Because here's the trap. Awakening is now a market. It's aesthetic, branded, curated. But real transformation, it's raw, bloody, disorienting. It doesn't give you clarity, it burns your clarity. It doesn't make you productive, it makes you still. It doesn't align you with your goals, it rips your goals apart. And yet, we crave it, because beneath the noise, some part of you already knows. The path you were on was never yours. The person you were becoming was a performance. The you lost needed to die. Still, we hesitate, because awakening feels like failure in a world obsessed with improvement. So let me ask you gently but truthfully, have you ever mistaken collapse for confusion? When, in fact, it was your soul finally refusing to play along. Have you ever felt haunted by the sense that you're waking up, but have no idea what you're waking into? That's not delusion. It's not depression. It's a spiritual revolt, and it's only just begun. Her name was Mira. To the world, she seemed fine, a little quieter lately, a bit more distant, but still functional. She still showed up to work, still answered messages. But inside, a storm had hollowed her out. A few months ago, she had what people might call a spiritual breakthrough, a meditation retreat, a shattering insight, a dissolving of the self the moment her ego cracked like glass under pressure. She saw through it all. The masks, the striving, the pleasing, the stories she had mistaken for identity. And for a brief moment, it was liberating. Like standing at the top of a mountain and realizing you've never truly been yourself. But no one tells you what happens the day after the mountaintop. No one prepares you for the descent. Mira started to drift. Her old passions felt distant, artificial. Music that once moved her now felt hollow. The people she loved, strangers wearing familiar faces. And the scariest part, she didn't feel sad. She didn't feel anything. She wasn't broken. She was blank, as if the part of her that used to care had simply shut down. This is what Jung called the night sea journey, a descent into the unconscious, where identity dissolves and the psyche drifts in darkness. It's not depression in the clinical sense. It's a sacred disorientation, a necessary death of who you thought you were. But to everyone else, it just looked like burnout. To Mira, it felt like spiritual amnesia. And in that amnesia, a quiet panic crept in. What if I never find myself again? What if there's nothing left to rebuild? This is the terrifying part no one glamorizes, because awakening isn't a glow-up. It's an implosion. It strips away your scaffolding, the beliefs that comforted you, the roles that validated you, even the pain you secretly clung to for meaning. And what's left isn't bliss. It's space. Too much space. At this point, most people do one of two things. They go back reattached to the familiar, force a new identity, pretend they're fine, or they numb out spiritual bypass, right? New teachers, new tools, anything but stillness. But if you're still here, still listening, then maybe like Mira, you're doing the harder thing. You're staying, not because it's easy, not because it feels good, but because some deep knowing inside you whispers, this is real. This is the part where truth isn't beautiful, where awakening doesn't feel like light, it feels like weightlessness, a floating between selves. And yet, this is also the threshold, the moment your soul gets a chance to speak, not in words, but in what remains when the noise is gone. Jung warned us, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. And this darkness isn't external, it's internal. It's the silence after the scream, the ground after the fall. So here's the truth Mira discovered, and maybe you're starting to feel it too. Awakening isn't hard because it's unclear. It's hard because it's clear, and no one prepared you to stand in that clarity naked. No applause, no instructions, just you, raw and real, and quietly beginning again. Here's the part that no one wants to say out loud. You don't heal by fixing the wound. You heal by finally living with it, not covering it, not bypassing it with affirmations and rituals, but by sitting in the presence of your own scar tissue, without shame. Real healing is not erasure, it's integration. It's looking at the broken part and saying, you can stay. I won't abandon you again. And that's where the paradox lies. The deeper you go, the less you do. You stop chasing, fixing, improving. Instead, you begin to listen. For some, that means stepping into solitude not as punishment, but as permission, a retreat, not from life, but from the noise that numbed your truth. You log off, you go quiet, you write not to be read, but to remember. You light a candle, not for aesthetics, but because you finally feel the dark. These small actions, they're not glamorous. They won't make a perfect reel, but they're how the soul breathes again slowly, deeply, on its own terms. And somewhere in that stillness, something shifts, not an epiphany, not a miracle, just a flicker, a tiny flame, a warmth you haven't felt in a long time. Not excitement, but peace, the kind of peace that doesn't shout. It just sits with you in the dark and whispers, you're not lost. You're just becoming. This is the fire that doesn't burn you, it sustains you. Not a blaze to be seen, but an ember to be tended. And for the first time, maybe that's enough. Carl Jung didn't just map the mind, he mapped the soul. And at the core of that map are three forces: the persona, the shadow, and the self. Let's start with the persona. This is the mask you wear, not out of deceit, but survival. It's the you that shows up at work, the one who smiles at the neighbor, the version of you that knows what's acceptable, what's rewarded. But here's the catch. The more you invest in the mask, the more you forget who's underneath. And then there's the shadow, the parts of you the persona can't allow. Your rage, your jealousy, your shame, the grief you never processed, the truth you swallowed to be good. We all have a shadow, not because we're broken, but because we're human. Jung wrote, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. In other words, what we suppress doesn't disappear. It drives us from the dark. Every time you overreact, sabotage yourself, or feel a trigger you can't explain, that's your shadow, knocking. But here's where it gets revolutionary. Jung didn't say, get rid of it. He said, integrate it. You don't cure darkness by denying it. You bring it into dialogue. Imagine the version of you that always says yes, even when you want to scream no, or the smile you force when you're breaking inside. That's persona suppressing shadow. And every time you do it, you split a little more until you don't know who you are anymore. The path to healing isn't to become perfect, it's to become whole. And that journey, Jung called it individuation, the process of becoming your truest self by uniting opposites within. It's not enlightenment as escape, it's embodiment as evolution. It's not light over dark, it's light with dark. To individuate means you no longer reject the part of you that's messy, raw, complicated. You stop outsourcing your worth to how others perceive you. You stop chasing personas and start recovering presence. And here's the most empowering truth of all. You don't have to fix the shadow. You just have to face it. Because when you do, something miraculous happens. The shadow softens. It stops screaming and starts speaking. You realize your anger is not your enemy, it's a messenger. Your fear is not weakness, it's unhealed memory. Your jealousy, just a reflection of desire unmet, unloved. And once you listen, truly listen, the shadow becomes your guide. Not a ghost, not a threat, but a mirror reflecting the parts of you still waiting to be welcomed home. So no, you cannot kill the dark, but you can walk with it, not as a burden, but as a companion, the proof that your light is real, because it had to pass through something to get here. Who told you who you are? Think about it. Really, think. Was it your parents? Projecting their fears into your future. Was it teachers grading your worth in numbers and obedience? Was it culture? Whispering what success should look like, feel like, cost like. Most of us never became ourselves. We became what worked, what got praised, what kept us safe, and somewhere along the way, we began to mistake the role for the soul. We call it personality, but it's performance. We call it who I am, but it's really who I learned to be. Carl Jung said the greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of the parent. But that burden doesn't end in childhood. It mutates. It becomes careers we don't care about, relationships we shrink inside of, identities we outgrow but still wear like armor. And the most haunting part, we forget we're wearing a mask until one day it cracks under grief, under awakening, under silence. And suddenly you ask, maybe for the first time, who am I when no one's watching? That question, it's terrifying because it means letting go of everything that once held you. But it's also holy because in that letting go, the real you begins to rise, not polished, not perfect, but present. To live clearly, you must live honestly, not just with others, but with yourself. That means saying no when it costs you approval. It means honoring what you feel, even when it's messy. It means choosing clarity over comfort, even when no one claps. This is not rebellion. This is remembrance. You were never meant to live as an echo. You were meant to speak in your own voice even if it trembles, even if it's misunderstood, because only then is it truly yours. After the collapse, after the tears and insights and nights you thought would break, you come something stranger, not peace, not joy, not even clarity, just silence. You don't feel enlightened. You don't feel broken. You just are. It's like waking up in a house you once loved but no longer recognize. Everything is still there. The walls, the furniture, the sky outside your window, but you are different. And because of that, nothing feels the same. This is the second awakening. It's not the storm. It's the stillness after the storm. There's no fanfare, no angels, no aha moment, just ordinary moments making tea, walking barefoot, staring out the window that suddenly feel sacred. You don't have answers. You don't need them, because now it's not about knowing. It's about being without performance, without agenda. And in that quiet, something begins to root, something fragile, but real. Maybe you're not clear yet. Maybe you're not confident. But for the first time, you're honest, and that, more than any insight, is the beginning of a life that's truly yours. You don't come back with fireworks. You come back with presence. You begin to move slower, not because you're lazy, but because speed no longer impresses you. You choose simplicity not out of lack, but out of reverence. You wash your hands as if cleansing memory. You sweep the floor not to tidy, but to ground. You sit, not to meditate, but because being still feels like breathing again. This is the return, not to who you were, but to life, on your own terms. You say no more often, not from fear, but from clarity. You let silence answer questions. You let pauses speak louder than opinions. Your world gets smaller, but deeper. Your days get quieter, but fuller. And in that shift, you stop trying to be extraordinary. You begin to feel the sacredness of the ordinary. A warm mug, a long walk, a truthful word. These become your rituals not to escape life, but to enter it. Peace no longer needs to be announced. It simply lingers in your presence, subtle, steady, enough. You've walked through fire. You've watched your old self crumble not once, but again and again. You've sat in silence when the world screamed for performance. You faced shadows no one else could see and chose not to run. And what did you find on the other side? Not a spotlight, not applause, just a quiet, anchored peace, the kind that doesn't need to be proven, the kind that lives in your breath, your gaze, your stillness. This was never about becoming more. It was about becoming true. And here's the final paradox. Everyone wants to be loved, but few ever learn how to love themselves gently, without noise, without striving. We look outward for validation, but the deepest healing begins inward when you sit with yourself and say, even now, I choose me, not because you're perfect, but because you're present, and in that presence, you become a quiet revolution, a reminder to the world that wholeness was never loud. It was always sacred. And still, you're still you, but somehow not the same. You laugh, but it echoes deeper. You cry, but it cleanses instead of breaks. You move through the world, slower, softer but more certain. Maybe you've lost things, people, ambitions, versions of yourself, but what remains is real. And that's all awakening ever asked of you. To remember who you were before the world told you who to be. So now, I leave you with this. When the noise returns, when the masks call your name, will you still choose silence? Still choose truth? Because the path isn't walked once. It's chosen again and again, with each breath. And if this spoke to something inside you, if it named a truth you didn't know had words, then maybe, just maybe, leave a single dot in the comments. Not for me, but for you to mark this moment, this breath, this becoming